Want an electric car but need it to say Toyota on it? Well, there's finally a car for you. Jared here with carbuzz.com out in San Diego, California to drive a very important new vehicle. This is the 2022 Toyota bZ4X. No, that is not a fax machine. This is Toyota's brand new electric vehicle, the first one as a part of their new bZ Beyond Zero Emissions series of all electric vehicles. This is the first time Toyota has sold a vehicle that's all electric since 2014 when the last RAV4 EV went out of production. So this is a big deal for the Toyota brand. Let's check it out. All right, so we're gonna start out on the road where I really want to find out whether this all electric bZ4X drives like the familiar Toyota that you probably know and love. And in a lot of ways, it really does. I think that the bZ4X shares a lot of Toyota's strong points and weak points. Some of the weak points being that it is a little bit loud. There's a significant amount of road noise when you get it up to high speeds, but it does have a lot of the strong points as well. This feels like a very solidly built vehicle. It has a nice ride, not super firm, not overly comfortable as well. I think that the steering feels a little bit tighter than what I've felt in some other gas-powered Toyotas, so I do like that as well. And because the batteries are mounted low in the floor, lowering the center of gravity, I do think that this drives a little bit better than something like a standard RAV4. It just handles better with that lower center of gravity. So if you're coming from something like a Prius or a Camry or a RAV4, I think you're really gonna enjoy how the bZ4X drives. You're especially gonna love the pickup on this car. Because there's no transmission, there's no engine that needs to be at the right RPM, you just put your foot down and it goes. It's not the quickest electric vehicle I've driven, but it does feel a little bit peppier than a Toyota with a gasoline motor. Speaking of that power, there are two different versions of the bZ4X that you can get. If you only need front wheel drive, that version is going to produce 201 horsepower from its single front motor. Or for $2,000 more, if you want the all-wheel drive, they add a motor in the back, and it's actually a little bit less powerful of a motor, and they actually put a less powerful motor in the front as well, but those two motors combined produce 214 horsepower, 107 each, so you are getting an additional 13 horsepower if you get the dual motor all-wheel drive version of the bZ4X. With 13 extra horsepower from having the dual motor version, the all-wheel drive version of the bZ4X is going to be a little bit quicker to 60. So that front motor version is going to hit 60 in 7.1 seconds. In this all-wheel drive version that I'm driving, it's going to be about 6.5 seconds. So we're at a red light. Let's figure out how quickly the bZ4X gets off the line. Here we go. You get a very initial thrust because this battery is tuned to give you all of the power right away, and then it kind of dies off. Like I said, not the quickest EV on the planet. This is not really meant for a performance-minded driver, but that definitely felt quick. It definitely felt smooth, and compared to a Toyota hybrid, which has that groany CVT noise, I really like that you can just silently take off from the line. And I think that if you've driven a Toyota hybrid in the past, you're really going to enjoy the lack of noise in this car. It is really serene in here. So I talked a little bit about how the batteries are different sizes depending on the different versions of the bZ4X that you're getting, but you probably just want to know about the driving range, and it does vary quite significantly from the lowest to the highest trim on the bZ4X. So there are 4 different versions of this car because you can get the XLE and the limited trim both as front wheel drive with the single motor or all wheel drive with the dual motor. Your most efficient bZ4X is going to be the XLE with just the front motor. That's going to go 252 miles on a charge, and if you spend $2,000 to get the more powerful all-wheel drive dual motor version, you're going to see that range drop from 252 miles to 228 miles. The limited trim isn't going to go quite as far. It's a little bit heavier. It rides on larger 20-inch wheels instead of 18s, so you're going to go 242 miles with the front motor version. That's about 10 less than the XLE is going to go, and if you opt for the dual motor all-wheel drive on the limited trim, that's going to be your lowest range of 222 miles. That's about 6 less than you'll get in the equivalent XLE front wheel drive. I'm sure I don't have to tell you that the bZ4X does not offer the longest range of any electric vehicle out there in 2022. especially compared to Tesla, not even close. But if you've been really waiting for Toyota to just go fully electric and this is the car for you, I think that the range is going to be acceptable because most people really aren't driving over 200 miles on a regular basis. Now, the bZ4X is not the fastest EV out on the road, nor is it the fastest charging either. So Toyota says that if you get the front wheel drive version of this car, you're going to be able to charge at a peak speed of 150 kilowatts. Now, for reference, vehicles from the Hyundai Motor Group, from Hyundai and Kia, can charge at 250 kilowatts, so significantly quicker. And if you get the all-wheel drive version of the bZ4X, remember I mentioned that they have different batteries from different companies, you're only going to be able to charge at 100 kilowatt peak speed. So basically, Toyota is saying that if you plug into a DC charger, you should get to 80% battery in under an hour. If you're charging at home on a level 2 charger, you'll probably add about 25 miles per hour of charging. Now that we're done talking about driving and charging, I've pulled over to check out the interior, but before we do, now is a great time, if you're enjoying this video so far, to please leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and ring the notification bell to be alerted of our latest videos. Doing all of that really helps us towards making these videos. We really appreciate it. Now back to the bZ4X. Okay, so looking around this cabin, we're sitting in the nicer of the two trims. This is the limited, guys. So it feels a lot like you'd expect a Toyota to feel. Obviously a nicer trim Toyota. So we do have the leather seats here that are heated and ventilated on this model. We have a heated steering wheel as well. We've got some nice materials here on the doors as well. The upper door cards are a little bit harder plastic, but they are somewhat soft touch. And I do really like this fabric that is covering the dash. It is just really unique. I've never really seen anything like this on a similar vehicle. Gives the bZ4X its own unique identity in here. Some other things you'll note that are different from a normal Toyota: this steering wheel is a very different shape than we're used to seeing from Toyota. You also have this little gauge cluster display above it. I'm kind of not a huge fan of the positioning of it here. I've had to put the wheel a lot lower than I think I normally would have, because if I had it any higher, it would kind of block my view of what's on the screen. That being said, the screen above is nice. I like that it's up there. They could have done this as a head-up display as well, but I do like the information that it has. I have my speed, I have my miles per kilowatt hour, which I think is the most effective way of calculating how you're going to use that range. And you can, of course, simplify it by pushing this button. That's going to give you a much simpler display. And honestly, it's showing me 250 miles of range, which is more than like what this car is really rated for. I think we started at like 270. I think that Toyota might be underrating the range on the bZ4X. And then over here on the center stack, we've got a 12.3-inch touchscreen that does come standard on all bZ4Xs. If you've watched any of my previous Toyota reviews, there's really nothing special on the bZ4X except for having charging schedule and trip information that you wouldn't otherwise get on a gas-powered Toyota. I really like this screen. It's got wireless CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. You can talk to it very easily and give it voice commands. I like how the climate controls are very easy. They are touch capacitive, but I think all of the controls are big enough, and they seem a little bit easier to use than something like the Toyota Venza's touch buttons. And we don't have a volume knob, which I usually gripe at, but at least the volume buttons are physical. You don't have to like touch a touch capacitive button. And then because we don't have a physical transmission down here, we have some really nice storage. We've got kind of this see-through area. You flip this up and you have your wireless charger. We've got some of our buttons for our surround view cameras. We have our X mode, which is kind of like an all-wheel drive mode. I don't expect people to do any heavy all-wheel drive here. We've got our brake regen mode. The bZ4X doesn't offer full one-pedal driving, but it will recoup some battery using the regen brakes, so you can slow yourself down a little bit before you come to a complete stop. We also have a ton of storage underneath this center console, so you can put snacks or your phone or whatever down there as well. I really do like the ergonomics in here. It feels like Toyota really did craft this as an electric car first, giving you as much space as possible in here. In terms of the back seat, Toyota's numbers are a little bit deceptive here because you get I think, a lot more room in something like the bZ4X than you would in, say, a RAV4. Because the load floor is completely flat, there's no big hump in the middle, so you can spread your legs out. And as you can see, the legroom here is plenty with how we were sitting up in the front. On this limited trim, I also have some really nice available amenities. We've got our air conditioning, heated seats, we've got 2 USB-C ports as well, and all bZ4Xs are going to come standard with this really nice panoramic glass roof. I'm not a huge fan of how they put this bar in between the middle here. It kind of ruins the expansiveness to me, but I am glad that all bZ4Xs come with this. Unfortunately, it doesn't open. Wrapping up with cargo space, you're going to get a little bit less here in the bZ4X than something like a Toyota RAV4. I think that's mainly because this glass slopes very steeply here in the back. Toyota says that behind the second row, you're going to get 27.7 cubic feet of space, which I think is a generous amount of room, not too big for this segment. They don't actually quote a number with the seats folded down, but I think it's going to be plenty for most crossover shoppers. Now, you don't get a frunk like you do in some other EVs like a Tesla, but you do get a little bit of storage underneath the floor, which is perfect for your charging cable. And now that we're done checking out the interior, let's take a quick look at the exterior, because this is different from any other Toyota vehicle right now. Since there's no engine, you don't need a lot of cooling here, so the only grill element is all the way down here, and then you have this rather flat front end, kind of like a Tesla. They have this really wide looking front end. You've got a lot of black accents here. We've got these really cool futuristic headlights. I think this really prints as like a more futuristic looking RAV4. We've got the larger 20-inch wheels here on this limited trim. You get 18s on the lower spec XLE trim, and you can also get the limited with a two-tone color combination. So we have this nice white and we have a black roof. You can also get colors like gray and red, or you can get this vehicle in all black as well. The wheelbase is a little bit longer than what you'd get out of a Toyota RAV4, and the vehicle itself is a little bit longer than a RAV4 as well, so you're going to have more interior volume, as we saw. The cargo space not quite as good because of this sloped roofline. We talked about that as well. The rear end is, I think, the biggest differentiating factor here compared to something like a RAV4. This connected taillight bar, I really think that these taillights remind me of something like the first generation Toyota Mirai, and you've got some cool elements like this neat split spoiler up at the top, and of course, no exhaust pipes. So that was the 2022 Toyota bZ4X. Pricing for the base XLE model with the single motor starts at $42,000. You get a $7,500 federal tax credit as well. Adding all-wheel drive will cost you $2,000, and if you want the nicer limited trim that I showed you in this video, you're going to spend just under $47,000 for the front motor version, about $49,000 for the dual motor version. Would I recommend the bZ4X? Well, that's kind of a tough question. If you're driving a Tesla, probably not. You've got more range and more power in a Tesla, but maybe you've been turned off by Tesla's build quality, and the Toyota build quality could appeal to you. And I'm not going to lie to you, there are a lot of other EVs in this price range. You have the Kia EV6, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, the Volkswagen ID4, and the Ford Mustang Mach-E, some of which offer longer ranges and more power than the bZ4X. But this is pretty inexpensive. It's a lot less expensive on the high end than some of those models I talked about, and I think if you've been driving your Toyota hybrid around just waiting for them to come out with an all-electric car, the bZ4X is going to offer everything you've been waiting for and more.